Hello and welcome to Creators Mind #ManSolver. My name is Achanda Kennedy and today I'm going to share with you the answers of Biology Paper 2 of 2016, and specifically today we're going to answer question 1 of this paper. Before we begin to answer our question, it is advisable that we go through the instructions and understand what it is all about, because it acts as the guide on what we should do and what we should not. That's our instructions, but for the sake of time we're going to proceed to our question. Question A, short answer questions, 44 marks. Answer all the questions in the spaces provided on the question paper. But remember, we said we're only going to answer question 1 of this paper. And it reads, Figure 1.1 shows an animal cell as seen under an electron microscope. So you can see from our diagram, we have part I, part F, part H, part G, and the cytoplasm. Question C reads, Suggest two cell parts which would be present in figure 1.1 if it was a plant cell. 2 marks. So this means each answer here is carrying 1 mark, 1 mark. Now let's begin to answer our question. Now, before we begin to answer our questions, let me give you a bit guide on the functions and the parts of this animal cell so that it can be easy for us to look for answers. Now, let's get started. Yes, so we have part I. Part I, that's the cell membrane, and the function of the cell membrane is to allow some substances to pass through in and out of the cell. Hence the reason why it is referred to as the selectively permeable membrane. Then we have part F. Part F, that's the ribosomes, and the function of the ribosomes is to make protein or for protein synthesis. Then we have part H. Part H, that's the mitochondria, and the function of the mitochondria is where respiration takes place, or you can say it is to provide the cell with energy, because this is where respiration takes place. And sometimes it is referred to as the powerhouse. Then we have part G. Part G, this is the nucleus, and the function of the nucleus is to control all the cell activities. Not forgetting the cytoplasm, which is labeled on our diagram. The cytoplasm is to support and suspend the organelles and cellular molecules. Now, since we know the parts and the functions, let's begin answering these questions. Question 1 reads, Identify the labeled parts F and G. Now, looking at our diagram here, we know that part F is the ribosomes, 1 mark for us, and part G is the nucleus, another 1 mark for us. So we're done with question 1A. Let's go to question B. Question B reads, Explain the functions of the parts labeled H and I. So this question is a bit tricky. You've been told you have to refer it to the parts and not the specific name. So when answering, but in actual sense, you know that part H is the mitochondria and part I is the cell membrane. But while answering, you have to answer like this. You say, the function of part H is to provide the cell with energy, because this is where respiration takes place. And sometimes it is referred to as the powerhouse. We go to part I. So you say, the function of part I is to allow some substances to pass through in and out of the cell. Hence the reason why it is referred to as the selectively permeable membrane. So we are done with this question and the 4 marks is done. So you are not supposed to say the names if you've been given the parts. We go to question C. Suggest two cell parts which would be present in figure 1.1 if it was a plant cell. So looking at the cell, the animal cell, we have some parts which are missing. Now, if this animal cell was to be a plant cell, which other parts would we have included? It's the cell wall and the chloroplast. Cell wall and the chloroplast.